I have to be honest, I've noticed that conversations with fellas that I know have changed over the... Like, we used to talk about pints in nightclubs, and now we're talking about stents and prostate examinations. Do you know,
Okay.
because we're of that
escalated
age.
quickly.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's because we're of that age. And we had a gentleman on a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about bowel cancer, and, you know, he's over 65, and this thing that they send out in the post, the bowel screening thing, which is saving so many people's lives. It's incredible, isn't it?
Absolutely. But, I mean, why should those conversations have to wait till we're in our...
Yeah, I know, exactly.
I mean, if you look at the three out of four of the main causes of death are from preventable health problems like cancers and cardiovascular diseases. And these are things that are highly preventable. So if we can instill in young men to make positive changes to their lives early on, that can have huge savings down the tracks.
Like everything, Noel, does it start with... I know it's a big... Does it start with education in terms of... Do we need to have more emphasis on talking... Like, I have 4 sons.
Right.
You know, do we need to start talking to them at an earlier age?
It starts, like, from really early on. You know, if we can get boys talking in schools through programs like SPHE.
Yes. Yeah.
And not just through the formalities of the classroom, but just more generally in playgrounds or in sports clubs. And that's why community-based programs are really important. Like, there's a program that just reminds me there, the GA Healthy Club initiative.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, where health is embedded in the community of the club. You know, which every parish in the country has. Yeah. And that kind of normalises health. It doesn't. Yeah. It's not presented as something that's separate from the community. It's embedded in the community.
What I love about the likes of SPHE in school is that I know my lads, they tend to take those conversations home, which is great, because they'll talk about what they were talking about in the classroom, and then it sparks a debate then with you, and you'll have a chat about it.
And they end up going out to the playground, and the conversation continues there as well.
Normalised.
We see this with the programme Sheds for Life in men's sheds. Yeah. When we started that programme, the men in the sheds were very, rightly so, cautious about the health service coming in and taking over their space, and were resistant to health conversations. But once you introduce it in a safe environment, we weren't seen to be taking over the shed, then the conversations flowed, and men were, you know, really proactive about that programme.
When it comes to men's mental health, why do you think it's underreported the way that it is? Sometimes I feel that men are afraid to be vulnerable and to say that they're struggling.
I think you're absolutely right, Simon. And I mean, this is beginning to change, but there's still a long way to go, I think. Yeah. One of the key things that's helped, I think, is to see high-profile young men and older men speaking out about this issue, as we're doing here this morning. Yeah. And that kind of makes it more normal. I think a message coming from another man is a really powerful support for other men to open up about health issues. But I think you're right, traditionally men have bottled things up.
Are we getting any better at it?
No, we definitely are, I think. Yeah. But you know, I think there's still a bit to go, and I think that we need to do a lot more, because traditionally mental health, there was a stigma, there was a taboo. In the context of masculinity, men were expected to kind of handle their own problems, to be strong, to be stoic, not to show vulnerability. But we had a webinar earlier in the week, and one of the speakers talked about you know, if you ask a man how he is, he'll always say he's fine, you know. Yeah. But he made the point that it's okay not to be fine.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And that's a very simple statement, but it's so important.
I always think people are afraid. I remember when our mum passed away in 2018, I was almost afraid to go and see a therapist. I was afraid, I was embarrassed. Yeah. Because I kind of thought, well, does that mean, you know, what if people found out, or what if people...
Is it a fear of it making you feel weak or something?
Weak, or maybe that's it. Maybe it's a weakness, or there's a shame attached to it.
That's definitely been there traditionally, you know. Yeah. And if you look at how men cope with mental health issues, they tend to, what they call, act out. You know, they'll get angry, or they'll resort to alcohol. Yeah. So they use unhelpful coping mechanisms, which often exacerbate the problem. And
also we touched on suicide. It's so rampant for men in their 40s. And in Ireland. So shocking when you read the statistics.
That's why a key message this morning is that whatever your age, whatever your circumstance, it's always okay to speak up and to ask for help. And it behoves all of us to help out and to support other boys and men who need help.
Absolutely. And it's also important that people are aware, that men are aware that help is out there. Yeah,
absolutely.
Like, in terms of resources, Noel, you know, there's been so much... You know, there's so many men's health charities. In terms of either a physical or a mental complaint, though, resources out there, but how do we get the message out there to men that look, either pick up the phone or just have a chat with a pal or whatever?
That's a really important point, Simon. I mean, the first protocol should always be the GP.
Yeah.
You know, they're in every parish and every community.
Yeah.
So that they provide a really important service. But sometimes men can be resistant, reluctant to go to their GP. And that's why a prompting from another man or from a partner or a spouse. Like we have a program at the moment working with agricultural advisors, and a training program to support them to signpost farmers who may be in distress to seek help.
Really?
So very, very often those gatekeepers in community and social spaces are so important to just nudge, to cajole, to persuade, to prompt someone to go and seek help.
Because
and really once you make that first step, very often then everything else flows after.
Well, the first step's always...
It's always the biggest and the hardest.
Because you build it up in your mind yourself, then it's bigger than what it is, having to sit someone down or to have a conversation or to be vulnerable. And once you do make the first move, that's the hardest part.
But the first step is also admitting that there's something wrong.
Yes.
Or might be something wrong.
Yeah.
And that you need help.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I think once you do that, though, you figure out very quickly that I'm not the only one here.
Yeah, I'm not alone. Yeah.
Yeah.